Hi, I'm Rick Stivers with YoungMartin'sReels, and today we're going to be taking on this Norseman 110. It's made in Sweden, and this is a very heavy reel. This thing weighs 2 to 3 times what something like a Zebco 33 weighs. Very, very heavy reel. And we're going to take it apart today. It seems to be functional, but it's pretty tight from old grease. I don't know if the drag knob turns, but I don't know how much good that does. The button works. And anyway, we're going to take this apart. And if you look here, that resets. And there you go. It does. So it's functional. It's an operating reel. And we're going to take it and get it back up and ready to go fishing again. Okay, the first thing you need to do is pull this little lever down on the front and unwind it. It only comes just a little bit. It's got a keyway here for these tabs that fit in, and you get these clickers that lock this cap on so that it doesn't just fall off. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is take the nut off of the spinner head, and then we will slide off the spinner head. Okay. According to the directions that come with the schematic for this, what we're going to want to do is rotate the spool one direction or another. It doesn't specify which direction. It just says to rotate the spool, and turns out, well, it does say to off. So here's an on and an off with an arrow. So pointing clockwise appears to be the off direction. So we're going to rotate it. Well, it rotates. Okay. Oh, okay. Look here. It's got this lock right here underneath that slides into this pin. Let me zoom us in on that, and hopefully we'll remember to unzoom us in when we get done. All right, see that lock? That slides right into that pin. Right there. Okay. So when you rotate it counterclockwise, it should lock the spool into place. And it does. That locks it down. Clockwise removes it, and it allows you to take the spool off. This is very dirty. We're going to have to do a lot of scrubbing. Really dirty line. All right. That's got everything under here, I believe, that we're going to need to do. So, from there, we are going to move over to the side and see if we can figure out how to take all this apart. First thing we're going to do is undo this screw. At least that's our plan. Now that's not working because all that's doing is turning the shaft that's turning this shaft. So we should have gotten that broken free before we took this off. So let's try it now while we can hold that in place. There we go. That broke the nut loose. Unscrew the nut. Take it all the way off. Now we can pull that header off. Okay. Now what do we have inside that we have to worry about? It looks like this just unscrews at this point. Okay, this is our drag adjustment knob. And it's a long set of threads. All right, there we go. Very dirty, but let's zoom back out a little bit. That's a little too much. There we go. Okay, we got that far. Now I'm assuming we take this nut off, and I'm going to have to get something big enough to deal with that. Okay, judging by the size of this, I wasn't able to do anything with my normal set of wrenches that I have up here. So I had to go to the garage and acquire an 18mm. Seeing how this is from Sweden, it made sense. There we go. For it to be metric. So it's a big 18mm. Alright, that's bigger than what you usually encounter on a reel this size. Alright, with that off, will this come off or does it unscrew off? All right, now the handle unscrews itself. So the handle unscrews, and that's after the nut. Now don't lose this shim. There's a shim that goes on under there, under the handle. All right. Now we have one nut on this side over here, and I believe that one nut is going to be holding everything else on tight. I think it holds the guts inside, I believe. Not certain of that. But it definitely is holding this plate inside. Okay, there we go. The plate comes out. All right, wow. What a set of gears. All right. This request may have pushed me over my skills limit. All right. Well, so far, all right, that comes out. That's fairly normal. Definitely got to keep track of all of this. All right. That is your drag mechanism. See how it rotates in and out? Well, when it rotates in and out, it pushes on this plate on the bottom of the... Okay. Well, all that's going to turn much freer with some new grease in it. All right, now how do we get all this out and back in? We're going to take a zoom close up of this. All right, well, it appears that this pin would push out, but I don't see it pushing out anytime soon. All right, let's zoom back out and see what we can do from here, folks. Now, the smart thing to me would be to just spray some lubricant down in this and leave it alone. But I don't always do things the smart way, as you guys know. So, there's a part of me that wants this pin out. And I tend to like to jump into things full force, so here we go. Okay. All right, that's got the pin removed. And I really have to say that I really wanted this button out because I want to scrub it clean. It's horrendously dirty. And it's such a beautiful piece of white plastic that I really think that it needed to be cleaned properly. All right, so now we've got it out. And I see how it goes in along with the pin. All right, with that out, what do we have? How can we go about taking the rest of this out? Okay, this gear comes out back there. Okay, he fits into that hole. Got us that far. Okay, that's maybe as far as I'm getting this apart, at least without cleaning it. Alright, at this point, this is as far apart as I can get this without cleaning this up first, so I can maybe see inside better. It's got a bunch of old dried grease and dirt down inside it. So until I can get that out of there and see something, I don't see any way of continuing to take this apart. I know that gear assembly has got to come out, but I don't want to break it trying to make it do so. So let's try scrubbing it up and see what we can come up with. Alright, after all of that, it appears that I've finally found the right part to remove. There's a nut right here on the top of the gear. You have to remove that nut. Now how to get in there and remove that nut, that might be a little bit different. It's closer to this opening over here. I've got to find a wrench that size. Alright, I'm back. Turns out after all of that, the one thing in the world that I don't have is a 6mm wrench. I've got a lot of other wrenches, but no 6mm. So, in order to compensate for that, I'm going to have to use a pair of vice grips on this nut. And fortunately, it's not really on there that tight. I think probably the best thing is just to hold it in place while I turn the shaft. I'm afraid everything's going to fall apart though when the nut comes out. Okay, the nut is off. That means the gear should now come off. Alright, that took the gear off. With the gear off, let's see what else will come off. I believe that we can now get this ratchet assembly off. And with that off, I believe the shaft will pull out. And that'll give us the opportunity to clean everything. Now, if you're going to work this ratchet assembly off of here, make sure to do it in a nice, respectful way, a little bit on each side. Keep working it up until you've gotten it off. Don't keep prying on one side, putting all your pressure in one place, because that will end up breaking it. Alright, I'll put a thumbnail under one side, coming in through the buttonhole, and then the screwdriver under the other side. That ratchets it up in place, and now that takes the ratchet assembly off. Alright, now the washer, the big heavy brass washer, goes on top of the ratchet assembly, and then the ratchet assembly goes down. Alright, it's got that part out. Put that out. Okay, it looks like we have a drag washer at this point that we've got to work up and out. And again, much as we did the ratchet assembly, we've got to move it a little bit at a time because we don't want to break it. Replacing a drag assembly would not be fun for this. Let's try. This would give it even pressure. Let's try grabbing hold of the shaft. Now if you're going to grab hold of this shaft where the handle goes, make sure to grab it on the there we go, and pull out, straight out. Alright, so there's the drag assembly, and that's why we do need to get in here. We're going to have to get in here to these drag washers. Alright. Okay, that's got us home. That leaves this cylinder inside, which should now come out. There we go. And there is that final drag washer I was trying to get out. It goes on top. And everything else here is clean. Alright, the ratcheting assembly, I'm going to recommend not taking that off, because I don't really see any point in getting in there, except we need to go inside right here and clean inside. This is our drag stack assembly housing, and it needs to be clean inside. So we're going to spray some WD-40 in there, drop ourselves a Q-tip in there, and let's get to scrubbing and see if we can't get that all nice and clean inside. Alright, this piece is now spotless inside and out. There's no reason to take it any further apart than what it is right now. So we're going to stop at that point. We're going to clean this guy up and set him back on the back side of it. That goes there. Alright, the part that's going to need to be dismantled at this point is this drag washer assembly. Like everything is going to have to come off of the spring end. Alright, so let's start off there. First we have a washer. And let's zoom in because this is small work here. Zoom in some more. All right, we have a washer here. We have a spring. That's your tension spring for your drag. All right, then we have a keyed washer. Now it's keyed because it's shaped oblong on the inside, so it matches the shape of the shaft here. Okay, next should be okay, there you go. We have fabric keyed, fabric keyed. Wait a minute, that one's not. Okay, fabric keyed, fabric not keyed. I bet that's an eared washer. It is, look at there. There's an ear on that. Okay. Wow, the ears are just about worn off, I'm afraid. I bet that's why this was so difficult. Okay, we're gonna have to make sure to get that in there properly with those ears. Okay, so we have fabric keyed, fabric eared, fabric keyed, fabric eared, fabric keyed. Spring fabric, or yeah. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is scrub up this shaft. And let's see what they call this shaft. They call it the crankshaft. Well, that makes sense. That's what your handle cranks on. So let's see if we can't get something to clean this up. Right, at this point, I believe we're ready to start stacking this drag back up. Now, first thing I'm going to do is coat it with drag grease, the axle shaft, or the crankshaft as they call it. Okay. Next is going to go this fabric washer. Grease on it, not a lot, just enough to allow it to slide a little bit. Okay, then goes a keyed washer. Now it's keyed to the post, so it won't rotate on there. It might have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it to fit properly. Okay, next comes a fabric washer. Remember, push on the rounded sides, especially if it starts to bind going on. You don't want to put your tension on the flats because it will snap that washer. Next comes an eared washer. It's going to have the two little ears on it, and that's going to be crucial when we go to put that inside this sleeve. All right, and I've managed to bump. It starts to bind up a little bit, give it a little turn. Just don't put the pressure on the flats. There we go. Slide it on down. Should have put plenty of grease on the shaft. Okay, we've already put an ear, so we put a keyed and then an eared, then a fabric. All right, here comes another keyed washer. It slides down. Then we're ready for another fabric washer. I got this one caught in a bind. Let's see if I can straighten it. There you go. If it gets crooked, stop and get it straight because it's not going to slide down if it's crooked. Okay, so the last one was a keyed. Now we're going back to an eared. Another fabric washer. My guess is when these were new, they slid on here a lot easier, but they've been compressed a little bit, which made them swell into the center just a hair. So I'm guessing that they didn't fit quite this tight when they were brand new. All right, and another keyed. So then comes the spring. I'm going to put enough grease on that to kind of hold him like a glue, and then put your last keyed washer on. All right, there's your drag stack now, built up and ready to go back together. Okay, it's going to fit inside here, but we're not going to do that until after this goes inside the case. Since we've got the case empty now, everything except for the anti-reverse pawl right here, we're going to go ahead and scrub it up a little bit better. It's not going to come shiny and bright and shiny because it's old, but we can still go ahead and clean it a little bit more than what it is, I believe. We're going to move on to the painted surface on the outside. We're going to use a little bit more delicate brush on that than we used on the inside. The inside, I wasn't worried about scratching paint. Out here, we don't want to mess up the paint if we can help it. Alright, so at this point, we're ready to start assembling some of it. We still got a lot of scrubbing to do over there. But for now, right here at this point, we can go ahead and reassemble this portion of the gear train. So, we'll start off by greasing the sleeve. And we don't need that much grease. Okay, let's go ahead and put some inside it because we are going to be sliding the drag assembly into it. Okay, and we're going to take this and slide it back up inside the body. There we go. Once in, it should slide around okay. Okay. Next, we're going to fit this back in. Now what we're going to do is try to line these two ears up right here, this ear and this ear, because there's slots inside this sleeve that those have got to line into. Alright, so got to get that in a line. Then it should, there we go, slide right in. That's our drag assembly. With that installed, now this phenolic block goes back on top. Put some drag grease on that, because again, that's still part of the drag assembly. Then we're going to put this ratchet plate back in, and it's difficult for me to do down inside there and you to see at the same time, so neither one of us are going to get to look at it. How's that? You've got to match up the keyway and get it to slide down on there. There we go, like that. Oh, also, let me show you. The anti-reverse fell out while I was cleaning it. We're going to put a little bit of grease on that and slip it back into this hole over here. And we may have to, yeah, I'm going to have to do that with the sleeve up. There we go. Use my little fingers. Slide it into the hole like that, and then slide the sleeve back down into it. Okay, should ratchet that way, but not back the other way. Make sure that that ratchet assembly stays down on the shaft, because now we have to put the gear back on. And it looks like it's all got to slide a lot further than I was thinking. So let's see if we can get that shaft to slide up in there further. There we go. Much better, like that. Now, when you put your gear back in, let's go ahead and put some grease inside it and on the secondary gear. Let's slip it inside. And we have to get it to line up on the shaft and slide down. Slide it forward until it matches up to the keyway. There we go. And you cannot see this, and I'm sorry, but it's got to line up on the keyway. There it goes. And then slide down. And it's got to go far enough for the nut to get started. Okay, so you might try pushing it down on the table and pressing on both sides of the gear at the same time. There we go. And that now has it down far enough I don't know if you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but that's in far enough now for me to put the nut on, which is not going to be an easy task in itself. But what you can do is try to get the nut in place on top of the stud. I'm going to offer a suggestion here. Put a little dab of grease on your finger, like so, so that the nut will stick to you. And then if you got to take them big Mondo fingers like I have, stick them in there, get them on top of the stud, and then rotate the stud. See if that will get it started. And it did. And since I do not have a 6mm, and I'm sorry to say I do not, I'm going to use a pair of vice grips to hold it in place. I tighten down the shaft. You do not want to crush that nut. So if you have to be like me and use vice grips, make sure you don't tighten it down too much. Alright. I think that has that. That's got all of that part of the assembly done. We've got a couple of parts here that we still got to scrub up to go back in there though. One is this gear assembly here, and it's looking kind of sad, along with all the rest of the parts here that haven't been cleaned yet.